A good leader will do the difficult things. They'll put the person on the performance management plan. They'll enforce high standards. They'll hold people to account. That's what a good leader does. A great leader does that while still building trust and relationships.
Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to the Fireside Podcast with Aegis Leadership. On this show, we chat with leaders from a variety of different backgrounds to learn from their experiences. If you're serious about leadership, mindset, business, or just personal development, then we're pretty confident you've come to the right place. Enjoy the show, and we look forward to catching up with you soon. G'day, everyone, and welcome to the Fireside Podcast with Aegis Leadership. I'm your host, Chris Turkington, where we get alongside leaders from a variety of different backgrounds and learn from their experiences. Today, we've got James from K6 Consulting. James was in the Australian Army for over 20 years, and 14 of those were spent in the Special Air Service Regiment. So we're excited to have James on and really keen to pick his brains around all things mindset and leadership. Welcome on, James.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Cool, nice. I guess first things first, we're pretty keen to hear about your journey, so your time in the Army and how that was for you, and then how that sort of segued into K6 Consulting.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. So I've got a bit of a funny journey from the military side of things. I joined straight after school at 18 and originally went to the Australian Defence Force Academy and the Royal Military College. So that's for the non-military people. That's the officer training school within the Army, within the Defence Force. After about 2 years there, I sort of decided that, or start of the second year, I decided I didn't actually want to be an officer. I loved the leadership side of things, but I liked the leadership from what I saw at that time was leadership a bit more on the field, in a person, and from my perspective in combat. So I wanted to leave to not be an officer. From the military's perspective, officers are much more valuable than privates. So I was doing quite well. So they dragged me on and kept me going, and I eventually finished the Defence Force Academy and the Royal Military College for 4 years before they eventually let me decide to be a private.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a different background from a military perspective. I think I still am the only person that's been a fully qualified officer while serving as a digger. So after that, I went to the infantry corps and went to the RAR, the 1st Battalion, and I deployed very quickly. I think within a couple of months of getting to the battalion, I deployed to East Timor as a second in command. And that was my first real step into a real non-training leadership role in the Army. I was only a second in command, but we were operating in small bricks, so I still had full command of 5 guys, and we were working around East Timor. And I'll probably come back to that about my reflection from leadership there, because it definitely changed a lot from when I was first leader. I then spent another probably got back from East Timor and then deployed again to Afghanistan with the 1st Battalion. This time, about a quarter of the way into that trip, I stepped into a section commander role, which was an incredible experience. Still one of my favourite deployments, despite a fair few things that happened, I suppose. And that's when, probably from my perspective, I started really, really enjoying leadership and really sort of trying to understand leadership a bit better and how I thought about it. After that tour, I saw the SAS while I was over there. They seemed like they were having a lot more fun than what we were, so I put in my application for the Special Air Service Regiment and did the 21-day selection course in 2010. And from that point, again, deployed immediately after being qualified. And throughout my time there, did another, I think, 3 tours of Afghanistan, a couple more tours to Iraq and Philippines and a couple of other places. So started my time again in the SAS. You lose your rank and you start again as a trooper, which is the lowest rank there, and make your way back up. I was lucky I got to stay in the same team pretty much my whole career, which was Kilo 6. So I started Kilo 6 as a private and finished there as the team commander, which was hence why I decided to use the name K6 for my business, because it's that journey of leadership that I think was really important for me. And yeah, so that's my sort of a very quick look at what I sort of did it while I was in. More specifically to leadership, I think that my perspective on leadership shifted from when my first deployment to East Timor, where because I'd come out of the Royal Military College, which teaches you command and control, being in charge, not being liked, making the tough decisions and everything, how I was as a leader on that trip, I was young, I was early 20s, was pretty, I think, ineffective. I had to work really hard. I was always having to be on top of my people. They weren't doing things because they wanted to please me. They weren't doing things because they were interested in what I needed. They were doing things because I told them to do them, which wasn't effective. And I wasn't satisfied with that deployment. I sort of changed things towards the end because I realized that it wasn't how I wanted to lead. And every single deployment, every single leadership position I've ever been in, I've changed. And I don't think I wasn't an effective leader for years. It took a long time for me to sort of get rid of some of the bad habits that I had, and then actually develop that vulnerability and that trust to really invest in your people and get the people to sort of get the results and grow them so that your team can be more effective. So I really reflect on that first deployment for me to East Timor, because I see that with a lot of leaders where they get newly promoted into a leadership position and all of a sudden everything's on you. And now we need to make all the decisions. We need to make sure we're in control. We're going to make sure everyone's doing the right thing. And it's exhausting because you're having to constantly stay on top of people. And then that changed a lot by the time I left.
Yeah. You can only sustain that for so long, right? And, if you're the one piece of the puzzle that you can't sacrifice, like you say, you can only sustain that for so long. And I think you mentioned there around being very directive up front, and quite a transactional type approach, which we know um, that'll get you by for a very short period of time. But if you want that sustained influence, then you need to generate that buy-in, right? I think the transactional piece, you'll get some compliance for a short period of time, but generally that turns into resentment, right?
It does, yeah. And people get sick of being told what to do. And they eventually respect is an interesting one, but they'll lose respect and they'll just get tired of it and just start pushing back. And every human being has got that tendency. We don't like that sort of leadership. I talk a lot about the difference between a good leader and a great leader. I think you can be a good leader and be that direct transactional. You can still get good results. It's probably not going to be sustainable. You're going to have turnover. You're going to be tired, but you can still be maybe an okay leader and have that result. But you'll never be the great leader. You'll never be the one that's getting 100% out of their people and developing them and growing them. And the person that people want to come and they'll take a pay cut to come and work for you. You won't get that if you're staying with that control, directional, command and control style leadership.
Yeah, for sure. I'm quite curious around, obviously, you spoke about selection, and a lot of our listeners probably not so familiar, or definitely not as familiar as we would be,
Yeah.
being military people. And that's an incredibly brutal and involved process that you've been through there. So, obviously, a lot of respect for that.
Yeah.
Can you talk to that experience? What was that like? What did that sort of teach you as far as mindset, leadership, those types of things? And then flowing into your time in the SAS as a whole, like, what did that do to you as far as your psychology and the way that you think and now the way that you act?
Yeah. Look, the SAS selection course is still the hardest thing I've ever done. I started that. I lost 16 kilograms in 3 weeks on that course. So how it sort of works is the first roughly, and I won't go into too much detail because we do like to keep a bit of secrecy about it, I suppose, but the first third of it is teaching some basic skills, lots of physical activities, a lot of fitness tests. You're doing physical training at least twice a day. You're getting put through some really tough team activities, some really tough individual activities as well. And that's sort of the whole purpose of that first third is really just to set the groundwork, putting it bluntly, to break most people down. So we've got the person who can do 500 push-ups and a person can do 100, and we've done 6,000, so it doesn't matter. We're all on the same level. And you start seeing a lot of the fittest people falling out there. And one of the reasons that is because the SAS selection course is not like what you see in a lot of the American movies where there's yelling and belittling and all that sort of stuff. There is zero feedback. There is no positive feedback. There's no negative feedback. So you'll finish an activity and you'll think, yeah, I did pretty well with that. And the feedback you get is next. And then you'll do another activity and you'll think, geez, I stuffed that. And the feedback you get is next.
Yeah.
Which is
interesting.
interesting.
That ambiguity there, because that's obviously by design. How was that for you, and how did you sort of reconcile that for yourself at the time? Hey, what's up, guys? Just a quick note to say, hopefully you're enjoying the show. If you are, feel free to like and subscribe, and you can share it with your mates. You can also find us at LinkedIn and on Facebook, or check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz. Cool, that's all from me. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, look, it's really challenging because, especially, like, I was quite well respected in the infantry. I had a good reputation. I was very fit. I had operational experience. Being in the infantry, just being 6'4" gives you some pats on the back.
Yeah.
I was used to getting that sort of acknowledgement as you go along. All of a sudden, when it's not there, all of a sudden you're really in your head and you really start questioning yourselves. One thing that I really took from that, and it's a tool I had a little bit developed before selection, which was really understanding what's in my control and what's not. So I knew what was in my control was simply how I effectively thought, how I behaved. It wasn't in my control if they selected me or not. All I could do is behave in a way that gave me the best chance. It wasn't in my control if we were going to get any sleep that night, if we were going to get any food, or what was going to happen next. All that was in my control is what I did in the next moment. And I really, really started focusing on that. And I had moments, everyone has moments on selection where you're just like, this is rubbish, I'm out. Maybe. And
100%.
but they're the moments of weakness you just have to push through. But really understanding what was in my control helped me get through that. When you start focusing on the things that, is it going to rain today? Geez, that's going to make it so much harder when it rains. Or are we going to get food today? I'm not getting enough food to be able to perform at my best. All these things that start coming in from the outside, you've got no control over. When we waste, and we do this in business, we do this in leadership, we do this in our daily lives, when we spend so much time focusing on things that are outside our control, like interest rates, the economy, job cuts, all these things, there is nothing we can do. All you can do is put yourself in the best position to be highly employable. You can behave, you can budget, you can set up, you can look for new interest rates, all these sort of things you can do that are actually in your control instead of wasting energy focusing on what's outside your control. And for me, especially in the first two-thirds of selection, that was really something that got me through. Yeah, sorry, go on, Chris.
Sorry, James. Is that something that you drew on from Stoic philosophy, like the ideas of the Stoics, or is that something you kind of just manufactured for yourself in the moment?
Look, I actually think I first started thinking about that because I saw a Stoic quote, and I can remember it was a Marcus Aurelius one. I didn't recognize it as stoicism back then. As now going into later in my career and now, I'm very much a believer in that Stoic philosophy, especially many elements of it. But at the time, it's definitely a Marcus Aurelius quote that got me thinking that way. I just didn't recognize it as stoicism at the time.
For sure. I think I agree. I really like that philosophy. And it's a nice, gentle reminder for us just around being able to tune out the noise, because there's so much noise in modern life. And I agree with what you're saying, is a lot of that can take you off track really quickly and really subtly. And it's just about focusing on, okay, what's important? What can I actually do to move the needle? And I think when you look at that and you dial it right down, there's actually very little that's within our control, like attitudes, behavior, even mindset to varying degrees. There's things we can do there, but those negative habitual thought patterns are always going to come in. It's pre-wired. It's a survival mechanism. It's just around how do we deal with that and turn it into something positive that we can do something with. And I'm really curious around I've done some difficult things, certainly not SAS selection, but you would have gone to some dark places there, once again, by design. How did you deal with that sort of negative narrative or that habitual thought process around, what am I doing here? I don't have to do this type stuff.
Yeah, probably two. So I think that the sort of darkness that you're talking about, for me, there's sort of two elements. There's what you said there, like, why am I doing this? Why am I stepping out on patrol? A week ago, we lost someone to an IED. They stepped on a bomb. Now I'm walking out in the same area again. Why am I doing this?
Yes.
And the other one is then there's the other things that come with combat, with casualties, with exposure to trauma. For the first part is like, why do I keep going? Why am I pushing myself through this? It's about the culture of the team and the organization that's what strengthened it for me. what was worse than me getting injured or getting killed was letting the team down. It sounds mad, and I think that many people won't really understand that. But when there is so much at stake, one person slacking off, one person looking out for themselves as opposed to the team has catastrophic consequences. And the nature of, even in the battalion before I got into special forces, how tight we were as a team meant that I was never going to do anything that was going to put the team at risk. And it was the same in the SAS. The SAS, we felt a lot more. I felt in a lot more control with most of the work I was doing. We were always like, no, we don't try and fight fair. You want to take every advantage you've got. And we did that. But some of the things we did were really hard. Like some of the walks we did into target and things like that were borderline selection hard. And they're the ones where you're just trying to put one foot in front of the other. And for me, it was that mindset of not letting the team down. This isn't from me. Another ex-SAS guy talks about had sort of a shame-based culture, but not in the negative context that a lot of people see it. It's you don't want the shame of letting the team down, but it sounds negative, but it's a positive thing, and that's what sort of helped push through that side of things, I believe.
Yeah. So, and I guess the cliche is thrown around a lot. You're only as strong as your weakest link, but it's 100% true, right? Like in a boat, if someone's not rowing at the correct cadence or not rowing at all, it massively impacts the trajectory and performance of that boat, right? So a high performing team is no different. And I've heard that a lot and experienced it myself, obviously coming from a military background. Around a lot of the time you do it for the person on your left and right and not wanting to be the guy who doesn't keep that boat moving in the right direction. So guy or girl or whatever it might be. How did you guys go about developing that level of trust and that level of not wanting to be the person that lets everybody else down? Like, again, was that by design or was that just a result of shared suffering, which, by the way, is an incredible way to bond a cohort when it's
Yep.
done correctly?
Yeah, I think that's the key one. When it's done correctly, that shared suffering, if you've got a great leader, that shared suffering can bring a team together. If you've got a toxic leader, that shared suffering will destroy a team. How we brought it together, I think initially it wasn't by design. In one area, it wasn't by design. It was just by the fact that how much time we spent together.
Yes.
We spent 6 months doing training just to get to the point of 12 months doing training before we got to the point of deploying. And that was 12 months where we were pretty much living in each other's pockets. And then in Afghanistan, you literally were. You were never 2 meters further from one of your mates for 10 months. It was just, you're always there. So that trust came through shared experiences, shared difficulty, and getting to know each other. So that first deployment, we had no Wi-Fi, no social media. We could get some DVDs from the markets that were 50% chance they'd work. So we spent all of our time sitting around playing cards and talking. So that's how we became so tight. Even later in my career, I didn't see that as much because all of a sudden people could actually go and self-isolate a little bit. They could jump on social media or they could just get onto Wi-Fi and that sort of thing. So it became a bit harder there. So I think initially with the regular army, it wasn't by design that we created that trust. Within the SAS, we had a lot more that we sort of did. So we were still spending every single day training together, but we'd also scheduled have once a month we'd go to one of the team's places and have a barbecue there. So and families would come. So families got a chance to meet each other, connect, so they could support each other if we were away. But also you got to know people at a personal level, not just a professional level. So that was there. There was an element of developing that knowledge and that trust just from how we trained every day and how much time we spent together. But we did invest in that outside of work as well. And yeah, look, and the culture of that place, the culture of the SAS it's an incredible organization, and it's an organization that genuinely doesn't reward or incentivize the individual. It is all about how much you're contributing to the team. The values and the ethos of the SAS everyone knew them, and everyone focused on that as what we would get us through everything, I suppose.
Very values driven, very principles based.
Yes. Yep. And And I'm sure you're probably seeing the same thing. Pretty much every organization in the world has got values written up on the wall. Very few of them have got behavioral based values, things that actually dictate how we will act and behave on a daily basis that we can hold ourselves accountable to. I've heard, I think Brene Brown sort of says 10%. So 100% of organizations have got values. Brene Brown says 10% actually have actioned, made them behavioral focused. It's incredibly valuable because so many leaders and business owners, CEOs don't believe in the values because don't believe in having those values because they've seen how token they can be seen. When it's done properly, when it's built into a culture and when people actually understand it and are invested in it, they become absolutely invaluable.
And I've seen it a lot where there's often a really big disconnect between the espoused values, what's written on the wall, and then the actual reality. And I think because putting something up on the wall, it's immediate. There's very little effort that goes into that. It feels good, you're like, oh, we've got all these values, but to get like sustained behavioral change takes a lot of work and
Yeah.
it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Courage being the important one, and the ability to have the tough conversations and hold people to account and really hold the line as a commander and a leader. It's something, we talk about a little bit because I see it a lot around people are really comfortable in the giving praise, back slapping space, down that end. But when it comes to the managing poor performance or lapses in behavior or discipline, I see big gaps in the ability of leaders to do that, or just an unwillingness to be the bad guy, right? Because they're so preoccupied with being liked and being everybody's friend that they
Yeah.
don't want to jeopardize those relationships. And I think, you can be friendly with your people, and you've spoken about the importance of having really strong bonds and relationships. But the best operators I've ever seen on the exact opposite of that, they can go from the praise and the real positive stuff and they can go and have the tough conversation or put the person on the performance improvement plan or make the decision in the best interests of the overall team or the organization, and they
Mm.
can do that in the same breath.
Yep.
I don't know what you've experienced in that type of space.
Look, I think that's and I really enjoy talking about this side because I think that there's an element where, so that just that saying, it's not my job to be, you would have heard it, it's not my job to be liked, leadership, not likership. Look, it's true, but it gets misunderstood. And again, same as values on the wall, it gets taken at a surface level. So sure, it's not our job to be liked as a leader, but there is no disadvantage in being disliked. So the difference, a good leader will do the difficult things. They'll put the person on the performance management plan. They'll enforce high standards. They'll hold people to account. That's what a good leader does. A great leader does that while still building trust and relationships. So I can, I can have a tough conversation. I can call out, and Hesley, you would have had to do the same thing.
Many times.
Yeah. Like I've had to have really tough conversations with my second in command. But I can do that in one of two ways. I can make it a one-way conversation, very direction, make it very clear that what they've done has been wrong and they're going to be punished and this is a consequence. Or I can have that in a conversation where I'm actually connecting with the person still. And that takes skill though. And that's what a lot of junior leaders don't get invested in. So if we look at the values, we get the values set by the strategic leaders within an organization. They obviously have a huge amount of leadership experience and and often a lot of leadership training. So they know how to have difficult conversations. They know how to hold people to account. They know how to drive high performance. And they can often do it in a way that still builds that trust. Whereas then we get the person on the ground floor. They've just been promoted into a leadership position. For the first time, they've now switched from being a technical expert into in charge of not dealing with technical problems. Now I'm dealing with human problems. Now I've got no skills. I've never been trained on how to do that. So what they're going to default to is either role modeling or they're just going to go on that technical expertise, which is have that hard conversation, but I'm going to do it in a way that damages trust and relationships. So the next conversation, the next interaction with that person is going to suffer. So I think you're spot on. Leadership is about doing the hard things, but great leadership is about trying to do those hard things while still maintain that trust, that relationship. It gets overused in the army. It's not my job to be liked. What that means is that I'll make a tough decision, won't show any empathy, and I won't give people the reason why the decision's been made.
Yes.
A great leader will make that tough decision. I will communicate in a way that's empathetic. I will support people through the process, and I'll give people the reason why. It takes minutes longer, but the result is completely different. People understand that not everyone's going to get, in the army context, not everyone's going to get the motorbike course that everyone wants. But if we don't give people the reason why we've made a decision, they'll come up with the worst case option. The brain's negatively biased. It's what we're going to do.
Yes.
But if a leader sits down with people and says, hey, look, unfortunately, this is a decision we've had to make. The reasons we've made it is this. People won't be happy about it, but now they can at least understand and see that potentially isn't an unfair decision that's been made. Humans will realize that if we get told the reason why. And I think that's a really important one. So the whole, likership versus leadership, it's a really interesting conversation. I think the worst leaders I've ever seen live by that and don't understand it. And they create a really toxic, bullying, lead by fear environment, as opposed to an environment where the tough things, we hold people to account, we have high standards, but we also maintain the trust and the relationship in a team. And that takes courage, but it also takes skills that can be taught. And that's what organizations like yours and mine do. We give people the skills to be a great leader, not just a good leader.
I really like that and totally agree. Most things are trainable. Having that mindset is important. I really liked what you said there around something, skills that have made you successful at a previous level don't necessarily translate up to the next one. And I see that a lot as you see people, for example, they might be fantastic aircraft technicians and they just assume, okay, that skill set's going to translate and now I'll be a good commander or a good manager. But often the skill sets are completely different. And success in one area doesn't necessarily mean success in the next domain. It's a completely different mindset and skill set too.
It is. I think even, Chris, you can even take that further with looking at leadership. So you can see, this is something that someone I used to work with said, but we can say that some leaders say, I've got 10 years leadership experience, but they actually don't. They've got 1 year of leadership experience they've repeated 10 times. There's been no evolution. And what worked, like you said, what worked for them maybe for the first few months isn't going to get them to the next level. So leaders need to have this growth, learning, evolutionary mindset where I need to keep trying new things. I need to keep experimenting. I need to work out what works. If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, cut it away. But trying to get 10 years of genuine iterative experience, we've tried new things, we've evolved, as opposed to this worked for 1 year, now I'm just going to roll it out for the rest of my career.
Yeah, 100%. And some really good advice I got a long time ago when I was much younger and probably more handsome was the always a learner's mindset was what my mentor said to me. And that's it. The minute you feel like you've got this clocked or you're all over this, that's a very dangerous place to be. So always being open to learn, to receiving feedback, to be able to test and adjust and just constantly developing our skill sets, right?
Yeah. We used to have a saying and it was designed around skydiving, and then it developed into close quarter battle training, like shooting and things on. And it was as soon as you think you're killing it, you're about to make a mistake. And I think with leadership, that's the same thing. When you get to the point where you're like, I'm nailing it, that's your clue to start trying something new. You've got a really good foundation. Now let's try something different. Because if we get the mindset that I've learned everything now, there's nothing else out there. You're about to make a mistake.
And your comfort zone's a casket, right?
Absolutely. I like that, actually. It's nice.
Yeah. We need to bring this into land, which is a shame because I could sit and talk with you all day about this sort of stuff. It's pretty cool things to talk about. But I guess a couple of pieces of advice for our listeners, or even something that you'd tell yourself when you first started out. What have you learned? Can you condense that down into a couple of key takeaways, or the way that you view leadership? Tough one to put you on the spot, but couple of nuggets that you would pass on to our listeners or to a younger James.
Yeah. All right. Now, we're going to choose the right ones. I think we've talked about a couple. So I think that for me, I think leaders really need to understand what's in their control and focus on that. You're not in control about organizational policies. You're not even in control of the boss that you've got. You're just in control about how you lead your team. And I see that a lot with leadership programs I run. If it's just at the junior level, people will be like, this is great for me, but my leader needs it. Yeah, but you can't control that. Just shift how you focus on your team and how you want to lead your team. So understanding what's in your control, I think, is really, really important. Probably the next is one of the things that probably one of the most common leadership mistakes I make. The advice I give people that I think is that I wish I had it a bit earlier is have the conversation. As soon as you feel that tension, whether it's a performance one, whether it's a behavioral one, whether it's something about yourself, as soon as you feel that doubt about in a relationship about someone in your team, just have the conversation, have it early. Someone turning up late for a meeting once will create a bit of tension and we'll be like, oh, I don't want to make a mountain of a molehill. It might just be nothing. And we let it slip. And then it happens again. And now it's a much more serious conversation. Whereas if we just take that 5 minutes when we first feel that little bit of tension to say, hey, what's going on? Everything okay? Notice you were distracted. Notice you're late. Hey, your performance has been off for the last month. What's going on? Anything we can work on? Have that conversation as early as you possibly can because it's so much easier. And I've worked with hundreds of leaders now and I've never had anyone say, I wish I didn't have that conversation when I did. But I've had dozens, probably more, say, I wish I'd had that conversation earlier. So I think that's a really important one. And I don't know if this is one of my biggest nuggets, but it relates to something we talked about earlier today. With the SAS selection course, we didn't give people positive or negative feedback. And it is one of the hands down, the biggest reasons that people pull off that course. A lot of organizations operate in the same way. We have to wait 12 months to get an annual performance review. We don't get acknowledged for just doing we do good work, and we don't acknowledge our team because it's just good work, but that's what they get paid to do. The more you acknowledge your team, it's the cheapest, simplest way to build trust and engagement is give your team more feedback, give them more acknowledgement. They value that. A mindset that I had by the end of my career, not at the start, was that my team should never be in doubt about how they're performing. If they make a mistake, we'll have a quick conversation about it and we'll move on. If they do something well, it'll just be a quick pat on the back with it. It doesn't have to be a huge, massive conversation, but leaders underestimate the power of just going up to one of your people and patting them on the back and saying, hey, I really appreciate what you did this week. They'll drive home with a smile on their face. It has a huge impact and it's completely free. And it is being shown through research to improve engagement with their team.
There's a really cool saying for that one that I heard around recognition. It's something that babies cry for and men die for.
Yep, absolutely.
And I think it summarizes really nicely what you said there.
Yeah. There's actually some interesting research about that as well. So yeah, it's so I don't know if they're my three biggest, but they're the three that come to mind.
Oh, they're three pretty good ones, man. And I guess, if people have enjoyed our chat today, James, and they want to learn more about you or learn more about K6 Consulting, how can they find you?
Look, LinkedIn's probably my main, much as I don't like social media, it's my main marketing piece at the moment. So I put a lot of content on LinkedIn. And I've also got a website, which is just k6consulting.com.au. And yeah, for my programs, sort of touching on what you said earlier, behavioral change doesn't happen in a short term. And it certainly doesn't happen off a 1 hour leadership workshop. So my programs, we sort of engage over a bit longer period of time, sort of once a month over 6 to 12 months, where we teach them content. People get a month to sort of work on it, reflect on it, try some new things. And just when they start forgetting about it and going back to what they've always done, we re-engage, debrief it, what worked, what didn't work, and then we go on with some new content. And yeah, and the workshops are sort of founded off, the first third are really focused on self-mastery, how you show up as a leader, how you be cool, calm, collected, how you make the best decisions and don't react and all that sort of stuff. The next third is focused on trust and influence building. And the last third is on some of the more technical things like how do we develop our team properly, tough conversations, all that sort of stuff.
Awesome. Sounds really good. And thanks for that, James. And thanks very much for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot for having me, Chris.
Hey, what's up, guys? That brings us to the end of the show for today. Hopefully you liked it and you got some value from it. If you did, please like and subscribe and share this video with your friends. You can also check us out at www.aegisleadership.co.nz, or you can follow us on LinkedIn and on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. That's it for today. We look forward to seeing you on the next show.